Picture this, you're in a cramped attic in small-town Ohio on a sweltering summer afternoon. Dust everywhere, old furniture, boxes piled high with stuff nobody's looked at in decades. You're just trying to clear out your late grandfather's belongings. You're not hunting for treasure. You're not expecting anything. You're doing the hard, sad work that comes after someone you love passes away. Then you pull down a cardboard box from a forgotten corner. You crack it open. And inside, buried under a century of dust, are more than 700 pieces of paper that will change your family's life forever. We're talking about a windfall worth somewhere between $2 million and $3 million. Not from an investment, not from a lottery ticket, from a box in an attic that could have easily been thrown into a dumpster. This is the story of Carl Kistner. This is the story of one afternoon in Defiance, Ohio. And this is the story of how cleaning out an attic accidentally unlocked a fortune that had been sitting there, silent and invisible, for more than 100 years. Carl Kistner wasn't a collector. He wasn't a dealer. He wasn't someone who spent weekends at auctions or flipped antiques online. He was just a guy dealing with loss. His grandfather had passed away, and the family was left with the task every family dreads, going through decades of accumulated belongings. In July 2012, Carl and a cousin climbed into the attic in Defiance, Ohio. The air was thick, the heat unbearable. The space was crammed with the kinds of things every old attic holds: furniture that didn't fit downstairs, boxes of clothes, stacks of papers, forgotten tools. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't exciting. It was exhausting. They weren't looking for anything valuable. They were looking to clear space, to sort, to decide what to keep, what to donate, what to toss. Think about the odds for a second. How many attics get cleaned out every single day in America? Thousands, tens of thousands. And in almost every one of them, people find nothing but junk: old tax returns, broken lamps, moth-eaten sweaters, maybe a few photo albums worth keeping for sentimental reasons, but nothing that changes anyone's financial future. Carl had no reason to think his grandfather's attic would be any different. The boxes looked ordinary. The contents looked forgotten. Everything about that afternoon felt routine, until it wasn't. Carl pulled down a box, cardboard, dusty, unremarkable. It had been sitting in that attic for who knows how long, untouched, unnoticed, ignored. He opened it, and inside, stacked carefully, were hundreds and hundreds of old baseball cards, not the modern kind, not the glossy, plastic-wrapped cards you buy at the store today. These were ancient, fragile, paper-thin. Some were slightly yellowed, but they were in shockingly good condition considering their age. Picture the moment. You're expecting old receipts or letters. Instead, you're staring at faces from another century. Players in old-fashioned uniforms. Names you might recognize if you know baseball history. Carl didn't panic. He didn't call the news. He didn't post it on social media. He did something smarter. He started researching. He counted the cards, more than 700 of them. He looked at the backs, the fronts, the printing style. He tried to figure out what he was looking at, and then he found it. These weren't just any old baseball cards. These were part of something called the E98 series, issued around 1910. Over a century old, incredibly rare. Think about what had to happen for these cards to survive. They had to avoid being thrown away by kids who didn't care. They had to avoid water damage, fire, mold, mice, 100 different disasters over more than 100 years. They had to sit in that attic untouched through world wars, economic crashes, and countless family moves. The odds of that, almost zero. Carl kept digging. The collection included names that made his heart race: Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, Cy Young, Christy Mathewson, Connie Mack. Legends, Hall of Famers, players every serious baseball fan knows, and one card in particular stood out: a Honus Wagner, one of the most famous names in card collecting history, one of the rarest finds in the entire hobby. But Carl didn't know the value yet. He just knew this was something big, something that needed expert eyes. Carl contacted Heritage Auctions, one of the most respected names in the business, the kind of place that handles museum-level collections, the kind of place that knows what they're looking at. He explained the find, the attic, the box, the cards, the condition. Heritage Auctions took it seriously, very seriously. The cards were sent to Professional Sports Authenticator, known as PSA, the gold standard in grading, the organization that would determine whether these cards were real, whether they were valuable, and just how rare this discovery actually was. Imagine the waiting, days, weeks, not knowing if your grandfather's attic box is worth a few $100s or something that could change your family's future forever. Then the results came back, authenticated, confirmed genuine, part of the E98 series from around 1910, well preserved despite their age, and the collection as a whole, estimated value between $2 million and $3 million. Let that sink in. $2 to $3 million from a box in an attic. From an afternoon of cleaning, from something that could have been mistaken for trash. But here's the kicker. That Honus Wagner card, the one Carl noticed early on, PSA graded it a perfect 10, a flawless 10. In the world of vintage card collecting, that's almost unheard of. Most cards from that era are damaged, worn, creased, faded. A perfect 10 means the card looks like it was printed yesterday, not over a century ago. It means every corner is sharp, every edge is clean, the surface is flawless. The probability of finding 1 century-old card in perfect condition, tiny. Finding it in a random attic box, almost impossible. What would you do in that moment? When you realize the box you almost threw away is worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? Drop a comment right now, because what Carl did next was the smartest move he could have made. The story didn't stay quiet for long. When a collection like this gets authenticated, word spreads fast. News outlets picked it up, card collectors started buzzing, the find made headlines. More than 700 rare baseball cards discovered in Ohio attic. Collection could fetch up to $3 million. Suddenly, Carl's private family moment became public. The kind of attention that feels exciting at first, then overwhelming, then invasive. Because here's what people don't think about when they hear attic treasure stories: the pressure, the decisions, the sudden spotlight. Carl had to figure out what to do with 700 fragile, incredibly valuable pieces of cardboard, store them safely, insure them, decide whether to sell them all at once or in stages, work with auction houses, graders, legal advisors. And he had to deal with the attention, strangers contacting him, collectors offering unsolicited advice, people asking for details he had no obligation to share. Think about the weight of that. One day you're a regular person living a regular life. The next, you're sitting on a multi-million-dollar collection that everyone wants a piece of. Heritage Auctions worked with the family to prepare the cards for staged sales. Not a fire sale, not a panic move. A careful, strategic plan to maximize value and ensure the cards went to serious collectors who would preserve them. But even with expert help, the emotional toll was real. This wasn't just money. This was Carl's grandfather's collection, a piece of family history, a reminder of someone he loved. And now he had to decide what to do with it. Keep some cards for sentimental reasons. Sell everything and move on. Split the proceeds with other family members. These are the kinds of decisions nobody prepares you for. The kind that can strengthen a family or tear it apart. Here's what this story teaches us about sudden wealth and why most people get it wrong when the money comes out of nowhere. Privacy is not optional, it's survival. The moment Carl's discovery became public, his life changed. The attention, the questions, the people coming out of the woodwork with opinions, advice, requests. When unexpected money arrives, your first instinct might be to share the excitement. Tell friends, post online, celebrate openly. But that excitement can cost you. Every person who knows about your windfall is a person who might ask for help, offer investment ideas, or quietly resent you. Every public mention is a trail that follows you forever. Carl had no choice. The nature of authentication and auction meant the story would eventually go public. But if you ever find yourself in a similar position, you have more control than you think. You can keep it quiet. You can tell only the people who absolutely need to know. You can work with professionals under confidentiality agreements. You can protect your peace. Because once the word is out, you can't take it back. and the cost of lost privacy is higher than most people realize until it's too late. The other piece of this lesson is about preservation. Carl's grandfather didn't know what he had, but he stored those cards carefully enough that they survived over a century in near-perfect condition. That kind of care, even unintentional, made all the difference. If you inherit something, anything, and you don't know its value, don't assume it's worthless. Don't toss it. Don't donate it without checking. Take the time to research. Ask experts. Treat it with care until you know for sure. The difference between trash and treasure is often just a few minutes of curiosity and caution. Let's talk about what happens after the discovery, because this is where most people stumble when sudden money enters their life. Emotion is not a strategy. Carl could have panicked. He could have rushed to sell everything immediately. He could have made decisions based on fear or excitement instead of clear thinking. But he didn't. He contacted professionals. He got the cards authenticated. He worked with an auction house that understood the market. He took his time. When money appears suddenly, your brain floods with emotion, excitement, fear, disbelief, anxiety. That emotional cocktail makes terrible decisions feel urgent and obvious. You want to pay off every debt right now. Buy the dream house tomorrow. Quit your job next week. But urgency is the enemy of good decision-making. The smartest thing you can do when unexpected wealth arrives is nothing. Not forever, but for long enough to think clearly. Long enough to get advice from people who aren't emotionally involved. Long enough to avoid the mistakes that burn through windfalls faster than anyone expects. And here's the part that nobody talks about: taxes, winnings, inheritance, found property. Every kind of sudden money comes with tax implications that can blindside you if you're not prepared. Carl's situation involved the sale of inherited property, which carries its own tax rules. If he'd spent the money before understanding the tax burden, he could have ended up in serious trouble. This isn't financial advice, but it is life advice. When sudden money arrives, talk to a tax professional before you touch a single dollar. Understand what you actually get to keep. Plan for the tax bill so it doesn't destroy you later. Finally, let's talk about boundaries. Family, friends, strangers. The moment people know you have money, they will have needs, ideas, and expectations. Some will ask directly. Others will hint. Some will guilt you. Others will disappear and resent you from a distance. You don't owe anyone an explanation for how you handle your windfall. You don't owe anyone access to your money. You don't owe anyone a share unless you freely choose to give it. Setting boundaries feels uncomfortable. It feels selfish. But protecting your financial future is not selfish. It's necessary. Carl had to navigate family dynamics, public attention, and the pressure that comes with a multi-million-dollar discovery. The lesson isn't that money is bad. The lesson is that sudden money changes everything, and protecting yourself is not just smart, it's essential. So here's where we are. Carl Kistner climbed into a hot attic in Defiance, Ohio, expecting to spend an afternoon sorting through old junk. Instead, he found a box that had been sitting there for over a century, holding a fortune that could have been lost forever. More than 700 baseball cards. Legends like Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, Cy Young. A perfect 10 graded Wagner card that collectors dream about. A collection worth between $2 and $3 million. All of it found by accident. None of it planned. Just the right box, opened on the right day by someone who took the time to ask, "What is this?" Think about how close this came to never happening. If Carl had thrown the box away without looking. If the cards had been damaged by water or fire over the decades. If his grandfather had sold them for pocket change years ago. If the attic had been cleared by someone who didn't care enough to check. The odds of everything aligning perfectly, almost impossible, but it happened. And that's the magic and the terror of accidental windfalls. They're random, unpredictable, life-changing, and they demand more from you than you expect. They demand privacy, patience, boundaries, and smart decisions. They demand that you resist the urge to rush, to brag, to trust the wrong people. They demand that you protect yourself and your future, even when it feels uncomfortable. Carl's story is extraordinary, but the lessons it teaches are universal. Sudden money will test you. It will expose relationships. It will force decisions you've never had to make before. And how you handle it will determine whether it becomes a blessing or a burden. If you loved this story, do 3 things for me right now. Hit that like button so more people can discover these unbelievable true stories. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. And share this video with a friend who loves tales of ordinary people stumbling into extraordinary luck. Because stories like Carl's remind us that life can change in an instant. That treasure can hide in plain sight for 100 years. That sometimes, the most valuable thing you can do is take a second look at what everyone else has ignored. If you found more than 700 rare baseball cards in an attic, would you keep any for yourself? Or would you sell the entire collection to maximize the windfall?